feature focus is where we take either a solution or just one feature within Scalr and take about 20 minutes more or less to explore that solution and just learn a little bit more about it. So it's short, sweet, just to give you a general idea of what that feature or solution is capable of doing. So today we're going to be talking about application blueprints. For those of you who are more familiar with Scalr and Scalr terminology, those would be Scalr farms and roles in Scalr's desired state engine. If you have any questions as I go along, please submit those questions on the GoToWebinar menu, and I will try to answer those questions as we go through the demo. I have just a few slides to go through to give you a general context and understanding of the things we'll be going over, and then we'll jump right into the demo. So my name is Ron. I'm a product marketing manager here at Scalr. You'll get all of my details to your inbox right after this webinar, but again, for any questions, please also feel free to contact me directly at ron@scalr.com. Okay. So first of all, brief overview of what Scalr Enterprise scopes are, because before we talk about the application blueprints themselves and the farms and the roles and all of that good stuff, we first need to talk about where those farms actually live and where will end users be interacting with that self-service catalog. So Scalr employs a hierarchical structure when it comes to policy enforcement and when it comes to provisioning. So we have this concept we call enterprise scopes. And a scope is essentially a level of management. So think about it like this. Like you have the federal government, and the government has its own set of rules, and beneath that you have state, beneath that you have cities. So if at the state level you have some rules that are dictated, then all the cities within that state have to follow that set of rules. But then again, you could also have some rules that are specific to one city within that state. So the corporate scope is sort of that cloud government. This will represent central IT, for example, and whoever owns the cloud in your enterprise, in your organization. The accounts will represent business units or the different departments that you might have within your organization, within your enterprise. So we have digital, healthcare, oil and gas. These are a few of the departments that we have in this mock organization. The environments, or if we use that analogy from earlier, the actual cities, the environments are where the end users will be interacting and where they will be provisioning and getting those cloud resources at self-service. The cloud resources and the actual provisioning process uses application blueprints within Scalr. We call these application blueprints, these frameworks of applications, farms. So you can see here in this example that in each environment I have several farms. You can have as many of these as you want. An environment can be mapped to multiple clouds. So underneath this farm, I can have OpenStack, AWS, Microsoft Azure. I can have any number of clouds beneath them, and we have various examples of how different customers go about something like this. So let's take one of these farms as an example. I have an Apache web server, an Nginx load balancer as one tier of an application inside this farm. I have an Apache web server, and I have a Hadoop cluster here as well. Each one of these tiers in my application is what we call a role. So a farm is your application. A role is a tier in that application. It's the catalog item that you can pick and choose out of the self-service catalog. So in this specific feature-focused webinar, we'll be spending all of our time here at the environment scope. In future webinars, we'll also learn more about the account scope and the corporate scope. But of course, any questions that you might have about this, please either send them to me or submit them in the GoToWebinar menu. Okay, so first, let's briefly go over what a farm is and what a role is, and then we'll see them in action. So a Scalr farm is the description of an application's desired state. It's essentially how an application should look like and behave at all times. So an example for that would be, I want a 3-tiered application. I want all the front end, I want to have at least 2 front end servers, and I want to scale up on high bandwidth consumption. Every time a new database server comes up, I want to run an auto-discovery script on all my front-end servers to make sure that they register with that database. I want to make sure that EBS volumes are reused in case of root provisioning or auto-healing or auto-scaling. And I want to make sure that storage is encrypted as well. I also want to make sure that everything is logged to ServiceNow and the correct chef recipes are being run on any machine that they need to be run on, and everything uses the right security groups. It's the entire description of how you want an application to look like and behave. It's important to understand that within Scalr, the provisioning process is as simple or as complex as you need it to be. Depending on your enterprise, let's say that your end users are not very technical. Let's say they're scientists, or maybe they're students, or anything, or maybe it's a sales team that needs to spin up a POC environment or a training environment, and they can't be expected to dig into networking and orchestration and security and storage and all that different stuff. You can set all of this in advance as a pre-built stack, as a blueprint, so to speak, and have only that farm ready for one-click provisioning for that type of constituency within your organization. If your end users are more, we can say, DevOps-y, let's say they're more technical, and they are supposed to pick and choose their own building blocks to build these applications, then you can assign that level of permission or that level of freedom to them. Within a Scalr farm, and the screenshot that we have here, which we'll take a look at live in just a few minutes, we can see on the left the different roles that I have within this farm. Roles are, as we said, the different tiers that I have in an application. So here, for example, I have a front-end Ubuntu app. This is my front-end server. This is one role. I have my MySQL. This is another role. And this Nginx load balancer, this is another role. So each one of these roles is a catalog item that I selected out of the self-service catalog to build this application. And there's a tutorial on the Scalr wiki, which you'll get a link to in the follow-up email for this webinar, where you're able to go through a very simple 3-tiered web app deployment and learn exactly how to deploy each of these. We're going to take a look at it now as well, but if you want more information about that, then that's in the Scalr wiki. Okay, and just finally, before we get to the demo itself, this is what the self-service catalog would look like when I'm building my applications, when I'm building that farm. So each and every one of these is a role. You have your pre-shared roles, your pre-built roles that come out of the box with Scalr, but you're of course also able to build your own roles. So for example, this MySQL role that I have highlighted here can run on any of these 2 clouds and has some built-in automation to it. The roles themselves are essentially bundles of cloud images, automation, and policy. So it can be, let's say, a Windows image or an Ubuntu image that can run on multiple clouds, depending on, or multiple regions, depending on where you want to deploy it. And on top of that, you want some automation, either through the Scalr orchestration engine or let's say Chef or Puppet or Ansible or Salt or whatever you might be using. And you have your policies that are applied to all the farms within a certain environment. Okay. So let's jump right into the demo itself, and we'll take a look at some examples to what I was mentioning. So as we saw earlier in that scopes diagram that we saw here, we said that we're going to be spending our time here at the environment scope, and that's what we can see here, indicated by this blue bar here at the top. Means that I am at one of my environments. This environment is called the PCI production environment. And here I have all the different farms that I already have running in this environment. The farm that we're going to be playing with is this one, the fraud analysis service. This is a simple three-tiered web application that, that we can play around with. You can see that it's currently running, and it currently has 5 servers that are provisioned as a result of it. If I click the servers here, I can see the servers that were provisioned here, and I can also have some specific information about them, but we're not going to focus on that right now. We're going to take a look more at the application level. So let's click on this farm, and once I click on a farm, it takes me to the farm designer. Because this farm has been running for a little bit, I can see how much it has been costing me. This is some cost analytics information that is communicated to the end users. So end users are a part of that business decision when they go through the provisioning process. I can see the budget that's being enforced specifically on this farm, and of course, we can talk a little bit more about cost analytics. And I can also see the projected spend for this farm. So I can see the minimum and maximum according to the minimum amount of servers that can be provisioned in this farm and the maximum amount of servers according to the auto-scaling rules. So as we mentioned earlier, a farm is the description of the desired state of an application. It's how you want your application to look like and behave at all times. A part of that will be how many servers do I want to have provisioned, or what cloud services I want to link to this application, whether it be, for example, something like an Elastic Load Balancer or an RDS cluster, for example. So if I'll take a look at one of the roles that I have here on the left, for example, this Ubuntu app, which we saw in the screenshot just a few minutes ago, I can see that I have this section here called scaling. So I have a minimum of 2 instances and a maximum of 5 for this specific role, and I can add a scaling rule that says, based on bandwidth or load averages, let's go with load averages, I want to scale up and down. And because this farm has been running for a while, I have some statistics to help me out here and show me what's been going on up until now. And I can use various statistics as these auto-scaling metrics. You can also, of course, create custom metrics. Essentially, you can write a script, have that script produce a number, and have Scalr auto-scale based on that number. So something that's important to me to mention, there's a lot of different options here. You have your networking options. You can say whether you want public IP usage or not, the security, the storage. Global variables are essentially environment variables that can be communicated to instances. There's a lot of things you can tinker with here. The process itself of provisioning from the end user side, the end user experience, is either as simple or as complex as you need it to be. And I want to show you an example. In a situation where the end user is not very technical, you might create a situation where they have the list of farms that they can provision, and all they do is they can hit this play button and launch a farm, or maybe clone a farm and then launch it. And then you can have a permission policy that says they're only allowed to make changes to farms that are owned by their team. Another option is to build something like this Storefront, which is way simpler, more of a one-click provisioning that is custom fit for your situation, for your enterprise, where you would click on the application that you want to provision, let's say a training environment, a POC environment, whatever it may be, and this is based on Scalr's API, and the farm will be provisioned on the back end of this. So it really depends on how you want to do things and how things work at your organization. Let's go back to this fraud analysis service. And we have our 3-tiered web app here. We took a look at one of these, at this front-end server. And I want to take a look quickly at orchestration, just to show you that same rule that I mentioned earlier. And you can see that I have a few orchestration rules. Right here I'm using Scalr orchestration, but I could also use Chef or Puppet or Ansible or Salt, and there's tutorials for this on our wiki as well. For example, here I have a rule that says I need to install Zabbix monitoring, and you can see that I can't make any modifications to this rule because it was defined at a higher scope. You can see this green bar here says this was defined at the account scope, and I am at the environment. So this is state law, and I'm right now just in the city, so I have to follow this law. I have a few more rules here. I have a rule that says deploy this web app. This is a simple bash script that I have deploying a web app on all the front-end servers. And I also have this configuration script that runs auto discovery to register these front-end servers with the databases. I want to take a quick look at the database tier, this role, this MySQL role here. And I want to take a look at one of the rules that I have here. I have this same configuration script. It just says whenever a new database server comes up, means on the host up event, and I have plenty of events here that I can take a look at, and I can also create custom events. But on the host up event, instance started and configured, I want to run this configuration script, and the script can be in any language that can run on the instance, and it can be local or it can be on GitHub, whatever fits your use case. And the target for that script is all the members of my front-end role, of my Ubuntu app role. So it means I want to make sure everyone runs this whenever, let's say, due to auto-scaling, a new database server comes up. And I also have this Nginx load balancer here. If I want to add a new farm role, I can click here on Add Farm Role, and I can take a look at some of the roles that I already have built in advance. And I know we're at the 20-minute mark, but I want to take a quick look at how roles work as well. So I clicked on Add Farm Role, and I can pick and choose the roles that I have here. You can build these to be a custom fit for your enterprise, for your organization. For example, you can see that for this base role, which is essentially just a machine that doesn't have anything on it, I can deploy it to any of these clouds. And some of them have this little crown here, which means there's a cloud policy, or there's a workload placement policy being enforced on this specific provisioning option. So you can also, as I said earlier, once I provision a farm inside one of these environments, all of the policies of that environment will be enforced on that farm. So I could say something like, all Linux instances in the US West 1 region must use this security group, or something like that. And then any role within a farm in that environment will have to adhere to that. So again, I can't choose any instance type I want because there's a policy limiting that for me. Okay, we can also go through the process of linking a cloud service like an Elastic Load Balancer or an RDS instance, but I want to quickly take a look at how we create these roles. Okay, so I clicked on roles here. You can also get here through the Scalr menu and through roles and create a new role. Let's go ahead and create a new role from scratch. And when you create a new role, you can see here on the left the different building blocks of what a role is. So first of all, you have the option whether you want to use the Scalr agent, and there are some consequences of not using it versus using it, and I'll be happy to share more information about this, but you have some information here. Using the Scalarizer agent is optional, but gives you access to additional features such as orchestration, auto-scaling, and some other features. It's a lightweight piece of software. I can see the orchestration that I have to run on this role because it's mandated at the account level. The images that I would like to use based on the OS family that I can dictate here. Orchestration will be the different orchestration rules that I want to run just on this role, like for example, deploy Docker on it or anything specific that I want to create. And global variables will be essentially environment variables that I can communicate to my, my instances, and I can use this to store passwords or let an instance know if it's a master or a slave in a cluster or anything like that. And we actually have some videos on our YouTube channel that explain exactly how you would create a role and go through the entire process. Okay, so what we wanted to do is to give you an overview of what a role is, what a farm is, how provisioning will look like. Once I've created a farm within Scalr, if I went to new farm, and just like we saw earlier, I started adding my different farm roles just like we did and built out that farm, I can choose how I want to deliver that farm to my end users. Once the farm is provisioned and everything is up and running, I can also monitor it and forward some of that information here to the dashboard. Okay, so as we said, the feature focus series, we take one feature and examine it, take a look at it, and learn a little bit more about it. I hope this has been informative for you. I don't want to take too much of your time. If there were any questions that I didn't answer during the, if there were any answers that I didn't answer during this brief explanation, please feel free to contact me directly at ron@scalr.com. But otherwise, thank you all very much for joining. Our next feature focus webinar is going to be all about policy and policy enforcement in these environments, specifically workload placement policies we mentioned a little bit about, and we'll examine that in the next webinar. You'll get all the details for that on the email. But once again, thank you for joining, and I will see you on the next one.